New questions about Sarah Palin's travel expenses. Hello. The Associated Press reporting tonight that as governor, Palin charged the state of Alaska for her children to travel with her. Some of those trips were to events where they were not invited. The AP also says that Palin later amended her expense reports to specify that they were traveling with her on official business. Now, this story is still developing. It's just breaking. It's not clear what, if any, impact it may have. McCain campaign has been quick to put out a response, and we'll tell you that in a moment. Right now, CNN's Ed Henry joins me on the phone with the breaking news. Ed?
Well, Anderson, as you noted, Sarah Palin talks a lot about reform and saving taxpayers' money as governor, but there are new questions tonight about her conduct in that office after the AP reviewed these travel records. They show that the governor charged state taxpayers over $21,000 for her children to take various commercial flights to attend official events with their mom. In one case, they joined the governor to watch their father in a snowmobile race. Another time, they went to New York, in which the governor was at a conference for about 5 hours in New York, but her daughter, Bristol, stayed at a New York City hotel for 5 days and 4 nights on the state taxpayers' dime while her mom was at that conference. It's very important to stress, however, to put this in context, that Alaska law does not specifically address travel for children of any governor. So there's no evidence that either the governor violated a law or an ethical rule. And as you noted, we do have a statement from Taylor Griffin. I just got off the phone with, he's a McCain-Palin spokesman. He told CNN, quote, like spouses and children of governors across the nation, Alaska's first family make public appearances, attend events, and perform ceremonial duties in their role as the family of Alaska's governor. When members of the first family participate in events, the state provides for travel to and from those events. Governor Palin refuses per diem payments for her children, which the state allowed for and initially provided until she ordered the per diem payments to stop. So what he's saying there is that there were no per diem daily cash expenses for the kids, but the fact is that the kids, their hotel was covered, but also their commercial flights. And in the case, for example, from Alaska to New York, obviously commercial flights cost a lot, Anderson.
Ed, he's saying that when there's an official role for the family, for the kids, according to this AP report, though, and according to a number of people at some of these events, there was no official role for her kids in some of these events. Is that correct?
Exactly. Like, for example, there was that one conference that I mentioned in New York where the governor had to be there, but the children didn't necessarily need to be there. They stayed at the Essex House in New York City. In Manhattan, and so that's obviously where it gets into a gray area about exactly why the children needed to attend. I mean, obviously, in normally covering the president, there are a lot of events where children don't necessarily need to be there, whether you're president or governor, but if you're traveling around the country or around the world, you may bring your family, and there enters into a little gray area there.
And the other issue, I guess, that people are going to pick on, or at least certainly her critics will pick on, is the idea that she or somebody then amended these reports once the reporters asking questions about them, amended them to say, you know, it was a family trip or family official business.
Absolutely, and that's why more questions are being raised. Taylor Griffin, the McCain-Palin spokesman, insists that the amendments were only made to provide more disclosure after these questions were raised, that they wanted to provide more information. And they insist that when you look at the full context of the reports, that in her first year as governor in 2007, Sarah Palin spent about $400,000 less than her predecessor as governor, Frank Murkowski, spent in 2006. So they insist that while, sure, there were expenses with her and her children, that in the grand scheme of things, it was much less than the previous governor, who was a Republican governor. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing, but the Republican governor spent $400,000 less than the predecessor.
Right.
So we're going to go back and forth on this, but obviously they're insisting that in the grand scheme of things, they spent less money, Anderson.
All right, Ed Henry, thanks. Hard to know at this point whether the story has legs or not. Joining us now, CNN senior political analyst and former presidential advisor David Gergen, Republican strategist and former senior advisor to Mitt Romney, Babe Buchanan, who supports McCain, and CNN political contributor and radio host Roland Martin, who supports Obama. David, what about this? I mean, to those who support Palin, this is much ado about nothing. To those who oppose her, it's another mark against her. How big a deal could this be if no law is actually broken?
Well, Anderson, these reports are and these activities are obviously eye-opening. But as I recall, most of this was reported early on when she was first named. There was a big story, as you'll recall, about her charging per diem for the nights that she spent in her home in Wasilla. And buried within that story, toward the end of the story, were these accounts about taking children on state trips and then charging the state for them. And as I recall, I don't remember whether it was reported that she amended anything, but I do specifically remember the trip to New York and of that sort. And what the story also went on to say, her defense was, well, look, you know, the last governor actually charged one heck of a lot more, and I cut it down. So while eye-opening and it costs them a day in the news when days are precious, I don't think there's much new here.
Bay, what about that? I mean, the AP will say that there's a new level of detail that we hadn't known before in this question of amending the things. But does this matter? Does this amount to anything?
No, it shouldn't, but of course it will, because it's Sarah Palin, and the national press is obsessed with Sarah, and they're going to keep focus on it as much as they can. But the bottom line is, this is clearly what you do as a first family. In those events where they say the kids weren't invited, all she had to do is make a phone call and say, look, you want me there? I'm bringing the family. This is clearly what you do. In my position as a campaign chairman, I have all three of my boys, as a single mom, have traveled on the campaign trail with me, and the campaign paid for it. It comes with part of the territory. She's the official, that is the first family of Alaska. When they travel as a family, they do it exactly for that reason.
Roland, is this something the Obama campaign will or should jump on?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think you do jump on it because, look, here's what you have here, okay? You have somebody who talks about being a maverick, somebody who talks about corruption in Washington, D.C., in terms of how we manage our resources. You could talk all day about what the previous governor charged and how you charge less. The problem comes in is when you say you use taxpayer dollars to take your children to events when your children were not requested. Now, in the grand scheme of things, is this huge? No, I don't think it's huge, but it does point to credibility of your argument. David's right. It did come up earlier, but I think the key phrase in this whole AP story is amending or changing to reflect what she wanted. That's the critical statement. That's where the questions will all be posed. Why did you change it then? If you thought it was all about your children, why wasn't it done right the first time? Why did you go back and change it? That's the critical phrasing.
It was a clear clarification, Roland. Let's not introduce any double standards here. All she did was go back. The press asked for it. She reviewed it. She was smart, and she clarified that it was official business, and she went with her children. She's not trying to hide anything. She never tried to hide anything. It was always there, the dollars, the kids. And so this is clear what's happened here.
But
and when you elect a mother of small children, you best expect, if she is a good mother, and you hope she is, she'll be traveling with those kids. It's very simple.
David, you wanted to get in, then let's move on.
I just want to say, I think it's inappropriate to use the word corruption and describing this and using that analogy. I have my problems with Sarah Palin, but on this issue, I do think, A, it's been reported, and B, I think a lot depends on state practice and state law and state, understandings. And when it was reported, it was done, these sound very strange. I don't know any, I know a lot of other states where what she was doing, taking per diem for staying at home, would be, my God, what are you doing? But within the context of Alaska, there seemed to be a much looser set of standards, frankly.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. A lot more to talk about tonight. David Gergen, Baby Cannon, Roland Martin will check in with you throughout this hour. Let us know what you think. Join in the conversation online at ac360.com.